Today on the 50-pound brain, we're going to validate our new electronic water temp gauge. I converted it from the old temp bulb style because I wasn't sure how accurate it was. So I've driven Higgins and the gauge was pegged out, but he ran fine, didn't seem to overheat, didn't seem to warp a head or blow a head gasket. So I don't know how accurate those numbers were, but we're going to check it now before we put it all in the car, and then it's way more difficult to do. So let me give you a tour of our ultra precision instrumentation here and test rig. So we've got our temp sensor that's going to go into the radiator thermostat housing, on the head, not on the radiator. We've got our temp gauge, which is electronic. We've got a fluke meter that is set up to measure temperature, and our thermocouple is right down there in the bottom of the water. And then we got a 12-volt battery that's powering the whole rig. So we're going to throw a couple different temperatures to it and see to make sure that what this says and what this says are pretty close. They don't have to be exact, but I want it to be pretty close. I want to know as I'm driving it, give or take, what the temperature is. So let's get going. So I don't know if you can tell, the bottom number on the gauge is 110, middle is 185, and top is 250. So we're going to just basically go between those numbers and see how accurate we are across the range. So we're using our calibrated hot plate. Let's see what medium. Medium would be 275. That's too much. Medium low 175. That's probably a good start. Alright, let's throw it to it. And it actually heats up pretty quick. This is one of those induction hot plate things. You have to have the special pot that'll work on it. I think it has to be an aluminum bottom with eddy currents and all that science stuff, generating heat. So we shouldn't expect to see any deflection on this. Oh, I gotta hook it up. Ha! That helps. There we go. We already get a little bit of needle deflection. So it looks like our gauge is going to read high, but we'll see once we get stabilized. According to the gauge, we're right around 140, 150 degrees, but according to our multimeter, only at 101. So that's good to know. Alright, one thing I didn't do, because I figured I was on battery power, was put this power smoother outer in. Maybe that'll make a difference, but we'll let it stabilize. Let's turn the hot plate down to low, which is 100 degrees F. So it should be coming down. Okay, so here's where we are. We're right around 170, and our gauge is showing, let's see, about 215, 220. So I don't know how much more accurate this setup is than the original. Now I did add in, since we started the heat up, I added in this power conditioner in series like it's supposed to be, and I don't know, I think it just gives a pulsating sense of power. I haven't put it on an O-scope to see what it's actually doing. I know it cleans up power if you're on a generator, generator power is pretty ugly as far as smoothness. But Higgins has an alternator, so I wasn't originally going to have to, thought I wasn't going to have to put it in, but looks like I might. And continues to climb. So we're, 210, 220 on the gauge, 173 on our sensor. So, I mean, we're basically almost not even in the thermostat range, and we're already running high on the gauge. This is why I'm glad I did this, so that I know that almost a 250 is, give or take, normal temp for this motor. So let's give it a little bit more beans. 200. Let's see what 200 does. We're getting close to boiling point. And since we're at 4,000 feet elevation, we're probably very close to boiling point. You can see our big disparity. Alright, so that's what we're showing the driver at that temperature. Get rid of the glare. So that's almost a 60-degree difference. The gauge is reading 60 degrees high, so it would not be shocking for the car to be rolling at 250 indicated and just be at normal temp. And that may be what was going on with the original gauge setup. So we're 200 set. Like I said, we're about to boil. Getting darn close. I mean, we've only got really 2 points to do our correction factor by, and it looks to me like it's about 60 degrees high, the gauge versus actual, which is just good to know as a driver that if we're getting close to 250, we're really in the normal driving range. So if we were to actually overheat, who knows what this thing would look like. But knowledge is power. So as long as we know that, we can drive it and take comfort knowing that we're not overheating it, even though the temp gauge says we are. And I guess ultimately, you'll know if you're really truly overheated by the way the engine's running. Now that everything is cooled off, we're going to hit it with, go back to 100. See how it does. So the needle's kind of stabilized. The water temp is right around 100, 102, 103, keeps bouncing around. And our needle's showing difference between 110, 185 is 75, half of that, 37. So that hash mark between 110 and 185 is probably around 147, 150, somewhere in there. So we're like 40 degrees off on the low end, 60 degrees at operating temperature, 60 degrees high, 40 degrees high reading. On the lower scale. So, okay, good to know. Well, we know what we know now. So, it's not going to keep me from installing the gauge. I just have a better idea of what it's really telling me when I'm driving the car. So, and that was the whole point, is just to know what is it really saying to me. The numbers are pretty irrelevant. So, we know that we're going to be in the upper third of the gauge when we're at normal operating temperature, which is good to know. Because you assume middle of the gauge is normal operating temperature. Not in this case. So, alright, let's go install it in the car. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to swap out the tachometer. I've already got it loose. Going to install our water temp gauge. I'm going to swap out our fuel pressure gauge. We've got all our digicals here ready to install. I'm hoping that this is what holds the tachometer in the back. It goes in the dash, and then this goes in actually like this, and it kind of straddles the hole, you know, tightens up against the back of the dash. I'm hoping these studs are the same thread as the old one. I don't know why the rebuild shop would have changed them, but he could have. And he did not, because these are Whitworth thread screws, and these little thumb screws, well, they screw on nice. Way nicer than the one that's in here. So, it'll be good. It's going to be nice. So, what we have to do, this is where the gauge illumination bulbs go. They're still hooked up because they bridge over to the speedometer as well. And this is more painful to get at than the speedometer because of this cross piece right here, this dash support, makes it quite painful to get my big ham hands up in there to get all this stuff done. There's the original. There's an O-ring just for anti-rattle that goes between the dash and the gauge. And then we're going to try and install this. You know what, I need to probably come up with a plan for these dudes and our wiring. So let me see what I've got for a disconnect, and then I'll show you what I come up with. Alright, so what we decided to do is do the quick 1/4 inch tabs. We put the opposite genders on each wire so that they can't be swapped. So I've got the red on the tack has the female, and the white on the tack has the male. And so we'll make sure we get the mating connectors on the car wiring, but that way it can't be swapped. Well, it can be swapped, you just got to put more effort into it. Never say can't. So what we're going to do with the fuel gauge, I got the old one loose, is we're going to put the power conditioner right there. We're going to use the power that comes in to the fuel gauge is going to run this gauge. Got the battery post here, and then the instrument post here. And yeah, we'll go down if we can. We gotta look and see what's below us. Got the ammeter below us, so it may have to go up. But run this gauge and then run one over to our new water temp gauge. So let's get this installed, and we'll see how to proceed from there. The tack is in. That was painful just because of there's some structure under here. I may have already explained it, I don't know, because the camera's been off for, I don't know, better part of an hour. Yes, and all this Swiss watch hardware and these big sausage fingers makes working on this car just super awesome. Let me find that washer. Alright, so Houston, we have a problem when it comes to our new temp gauge. The original temp gauge was a 2-threaded post mount. I don't know if you can see that. And it, would go on the back of the gauge like this, just like the tachometer, and straddle the gauge and push on the face of the back of the side of the dash. Well, when we got this rebuilt and converted over, now it's a single post clamp style, and so I've got to make a new saddle or clamp or whatever you want to call the thing before we can mount our temp gauge. So that'll be another day, but I do want to test out the tachometer. Got the tach in, got the fuel gauge in, got our power conditioner on the back of the fuel gauge. Let's see how we did. Just want to see basically if the tach works. Oh, look at that. Seems to work, so that's cool. Sweet. Alright, well, water temp will be another day. So I'll post this video and I'll give you an update when I get that thing made, because it'll be a minute. Just because I got a lot of work to do at work now. So thanks for watching. And the mountains never looked prettier. Higgins got to go back to his room. He doesn't like the cold. So off we go. We'll bust him out another day when we're ready to finish this gauge installation.